So research has demonstrated that having a growth mindset is important for youth development. What is a growth mindset? How is it defined?
Yeah, so Carol Dweck and her colleagues have described a growth mindset as simply the idea that intelligence is a malleable quality, not something you're born with at a fixed level, but something you grow and develop with experience over time. And the reason why that can be helpful is that in society, there's often the view that if something is hard for you, it means you fundamentally lack ability, and that undermines thriving and undermines resilience. A growth mindset can provide optimism and facilitate resilience.
And why is a growth mindset important to young people, to youth thriving?
Part of thriving in society involves being prepared to overcome the challenges and difficulties that you face. All of us take on new roles in society. We move from one school to the next, one job to the next, one institution to the next. And when that happens, we face challenges that we may or may not have been prepared for in advance. In those moments, how a person makes sense of those challenges, what the story they tell themselves about them, can powerfully influence their ability to cope and overcome those challenges. A growth mindset is one factor among many that allows a person to see some difficulty, some adversity as an opportunity for growth, as a chance to learn, a chance to develop, as opposed to a sign that perhaps you can't succeed and can't thrive.
So if a youth has a growth mindset, does it show up everywhere in their lives? Is it possible to have a growth mindset in one area and not another? If so, what does that look like?
Yeah, a really important question right now around growth mindsets is whether you can simply tell a child to have a growth mindset or teach them a growth mindset, and then that they will be resilient in all aspects of life. But what we're learning increasingly is that as children develop, they develop more specific views of their abilities and their traits in different areas. And so while really young children may have a global view that being a good person or not is a fixed entity, as children develop and become into adolescence, there's more compartmentalization. So a person may say, sure, I can get better at math, but I'll never become a good writer. Sure, I can get better at sports, I'll never get better at school. And so a challenge is, how might we develop aspects of growth mindset in a domain where a child can have success, and then invite that child to see an analogy to other domains. And when you look at our intervention materials, that's often what we do. We say, look, you used to not be able to ride a bike, you developed the ability to learn how to ride a bike. There are a lot of other skills that people acquire. So while growth mindset is not a global belief that affects all areas of life, it could be if we did a better job of building bridges of a growth mindset across different aspects.
And in your research, you have developed these bridges, and have you seen effects?
Yeah, so a common aspect of any program that we've developed to teach a growth mindset is to invite a child or a young person to reflect on settings where they've used a growth mindset, perhaps in another way. So in one set of experiments, we had young people who learned how to do something hard at summer camp. They learned how to climb the ropes course, they learned how to swim, they did something that was scary, then they learned how to do it, and then they overcame it. And then upon the transition to high school, we said, how is that a lesson that might apply to other scary things you might face, like more difficult algebra or tough criticism on a writing exercise? So increasingly we're thinking that things like thriving and resilience across tough life transitions are done because people can make an analogy and see how the new difficulty is related in some way to something they've overcome in the past.
Wonderful. So we talked a little about some of the interventions that are effective in developing a growth mindset. What makes these interventions effective, do you think?
Well, one of the most important things for changing any aspect of a young person's internal beliefs or values is, at least in Western society, to not have it be imposed by adults who imply that the child has some kind of flaw in his or her mind or beliefs. And so we never start from the position of, we adults have figured it all out, you should do what we say. Instead, we simply invite young people to learn about true information, about accurate ways of potentially perceiving the world, and then say, you have wisdom that we as adults don't have. you as a young person are an expert in your own life. Would you mind explaining to other students like you how this mindset, this idea might be beneficial? So a key takeaway is that when attempting to help adolescents adopt more productive mindsets is to do less telling and more inviting to create and explore and develop those mindsets on their own.
You talked a little about the timing of the intervention, implied at least in some of your answers. What's important about the timing of an intervention around mindset?
Yeah, there are two things that are important for timing in interventions, we think, for adolescents especially. One is that the time in a person's life can determine whether they're going through an adversity or a challenge. And a mindset is especially relevant when it's used in a way that helps you interpret an ongoing challenge.
Mm-hmm.
If everything is fine, you don't need a growth mindset
Mm-hmm.
because you're coasting on your ability, you're not being pushed and challenged. So life transitions such as the transition to high school, the transition to college, the transition from college to the workplace, these are occasions to doubt your ability, to doubt your belonging, and in those moments a growth mindset may be especially beneficial. But transitions have a second benefit, especially around the internalization of new beliefs. Because when you're making a life transition to a new job, a new setting, a new school, you're also wondering which of the beliefs that I have are relevant here.
Mm-hmm.
That is, people are open to attitude change and they're open to belief change, we think, because of a life transition. And so timing can matter both for when the mindset is relevant and also when you're open to potentially adopting another mindset.